They put me in handcuffs on the edge of a lake I legally owned, while the HOA president stood there smiling like she'd just won the Super Bowl. The deputy kept saying, "Ma'am, step back," and she kept pointing at me like I was some kind of criminal. That was the moment I realized this wasn't neighborhood drama. This was a power grab with badges involved. I'm Ethan Cole, 51, recently divorced, and the only thing I wanted was quiet trees, water, no arguing through drywall. So when I found a rural property outside a gated community called Pinecrest Shores, I bought it. 40-something acres, a small cabin, and a lake locals called Silver Pine, the kind of place you picture when you're trying to start over without announcing it to the world. The paperwork was clean. County deed, survey maps, property lines, all the boring stuff that keeps life from getting exciting. I didn't even know Pinecrest Shores had a homeowners association until I saw the entrance sign and the decorative stone wall that screamed, "Someone has too much time." A week after I moved in, I'm on my dock replacing a cracked board, sweat dripping into my eyes when I hear heels clicking like a metronome. I look up and there she is, Brenda Holloway. Bleached blonde bob, white blazer, a clipboard tucked under her arm like it's a weapon. She doesn't say hello. She doesn't ask if she's allowed to be there. She just looks at my dock like she's inspecting a motel room and goes, "You can't do that." I blinked at her. "Can't do what?" She taps her clipboard. "Alter community shoreline structures. This lake is managed by Pinecrest Shores. The homeowners association has rules." I kept my voice calm because I didn't feel like starring in a viral video. "This isn't community shoreline. This is my property. The lake is on my deed." Brenda actually laughed like I'd told her the sky was green. "Sweetie, no. Nobody owns a lake. That water is for our residents. You're going to stop what you're doing." I climbed up, walked to my toolbox, and pulled out a folder. I'm that guy, the guy with folders. I handed her a copy of the deed with the lake boundary highlighted. "I own it. The land around it, too." She glanced down for half a second, then shoved it back toward me like it was junk mail. "We'll see about that." 2 days later, I get a letter taped to my cabin door. Not mailed. Taped. Trespass notice. Violation. Fines. It said I was interfering with HOA access to community waters, and if I didn't comply, they'd escalate. Escalate. That word sat in my gut like a stone. At first, I tried to be normal about it. I called the number on the letter. I got a voicemail that sounded like Brenda reading a script. I emailed, attached my deed, asked for a meeting. I got one response. "You are not authorized to contact the board outside approved channels." Approved channels. Like I needed permission to say, "Hey, stop messing with my land." Then the little things started. Someone stood at the edge of my tree line taking photos. A pickup I didn't recognize parked by my driveway idling, then rolled off when I stepped outside. I got a surprise visit from a county inspector because somebody reported my dock as unsafe construction. And it wasn't just annoying, it was expensive. Every time I turned around, I was dealing with paperwork, phone calls, and people who spoke in that fake polite tone that means, "We hope you mess up." I'm not proud of this, but one night I sat at my kitchen table staring at the bills and thought, this is ridiculous. I came here to get away from stress, and now I'm paying money to prove I exist. I wasn't spiraling into some poetic crisis, I was doing the math. If I keep fighting blind, I burn through savings. If I stop using the lake, I'm basically letting Brenda rewrite my deed with her mouth. So the next morning, I drove straight to the county records office. No drama, no speeches, just me, a polite clerk, and a stack of old maps that smelled like dust and toner. That's where I met Martha Green, a retired county archivist, who looked at my paperwork like it was a crossword puzzle she couldn't wait to solve. She didn't even flinch when I said, HOA. She just sighed and said, "Which one?" Martha pulled Historic Plat's original subdivision documents and something that made my neck go warm, a line in the early HOA filings that basically excluded the lake parcel from their jurisdiction. Not kinda, not maybe. Excluded. I photocopied everything. I scanned it. I backed it up twice because apparently I'd entered the stage of life where I carry documents like a paranoid accountant. Still, Brenda didn't slow down. If anything, she got louder. A few days later, I'm in the water, just swimming, nothing crazy, when I hear sirens bouncing through the trees. 3 patrol cars swing down my dirt road like I'm hosting a hostage situation. I stand up in the shallow water, hands visible, and I see Brenda on my dock. On my dock. She's pointing at me, chin lifted, performing. "He has weapons," she yells. "He threatened me. He's trespassing on community property." The deputy steps forward, voice hard. "Sir, out of the water, now." I'm trying to process how my morning swim turned into a felony and the world compresses into little snapshots. The sun on the lake, the deputy's hand hovering near his belt, Brenda's face lit up like she's enjoying this. I don't argue. I walk out. I say this is my property, and I point toward my cabin like the deed is inside, because it is. They cuff me anyway. Cold metal wrists tight right there in front of my own front door. Brenda hovers behind the deputies like she's directing a movie. Then Officer Daniel Brooks, younger guy, calm eyes, asks for my ID and the proof. I tell him where it is. He walks into my cabin with another deputy and comes back holding my folder. He flips through the deed, checks the map, and I watch his face change. Not dramatic, just that shift from routine call to someone lied. He turns to Brenda. "Ma'am, this paperwork shows he owns the lake parcel." Brenda snaps. "That can't be right." Brooks asks, "Why did you report weapons?" She hesitates, and for the first time her confidence stutters. I felt unsafe." Brooks looks at her like she just told him she felt unsafe around a goldfish. The cuffs come off. The deputies apologize in that clipped way cops do when they know they got dragged into nonsense. But the damage was done. My neighbors had seen the lights. Somebody recorded part of it. Brenda had turned me into the problem publicly, and she'd done it with a 911 call. That night I didn't sleep. I sat there thinking, okay, if she's willing to weaponize the police, she'll do anything. So I stopped treating this like a noisy neighbor and started treating it like an organized operation. I hired a lawyer named Ryan Foster, the kind of guy who looks too young to be good until you see the way he reads a document, fast, sharp, no wasted motion. He asked me 2 questions. What do you want, and how far are you willing to go? I said I want her off my land, off my lake, and out of my life. Ryan smiled once and said, "Then we don't argue opinions. We argue authority." He sent formal notices. He demanded HOA records. He asked for Marina permits, financial statements, board minutes, everything connected to their community access story. And here's where things got interesting. Because Pinecrest Shores wasn't just using the lake. They were running a little marina operation at the edge of my parcel docks, slip storage racks, and charging residence fees like it was a private club. Ryan brought in Dr. Lauren Pierce, an environmental attorney who talked like every sentence had been tested in court. She walked the shoreline with a GPS unit, studied the creek that fed out of the lake, and asked, "Where does this connect?" I told her about Maple Run Creek. She nodded slowly, then said words that made my spine straighten. "If this ties into a navigable waterway system, federal oversight can apply." That changes the game. It wasn't magic. It wasn't some movie trick. It was paperwork mapping and laws that exist because water doesn't care about your neighborhood rules. Brenda didn't know that. Brenda thought the HOA was a crown. We set a meeting of the Pinecrest Shores Clubhouse, a community forum, which is just a fancy way of saying a room full of people waiting to watch someone get embarrassed. Brenda stood at a podium with her clipboard acting like she was giving a State of the Union. She started with, "We have an outsider threatening our community resources." Ryan stood up polite as a surgeon. "Ma'am, we're going to stick to facts." Lauren placed a binder on the table. Surveys, hydrology notes, jurisdiction references. Ryan placed another, the original HOA filings, the exclusion language, the record of Brenda's 911 claim. And then, the final punch, an investigator not in a dramatic trench coat, just a normal guy with a badge and a folder introduced himself and stated they were reviewing the marina's permits and the HOA's financial handling tied to the lake access. The room went quiet in that way that feels like pressure on your ears. Brenda tried to talk over him. She actually leaned toward the microphone and said, "This is harassment." But the investigator didn't stop. He asked about fees collected, contracts signed, board approvals. He mentioned misrepresentation. He mentioned false reporting. One of the board members, a gray-haired guy who'd been sitting stiff as a fence post, finally spoke up. "Brenda, what did you do?" Brenda's face tightened. Her eyes darted, not scared exactly, more like cornered. She looked around, searching for the old reaction, people shrinking back, letting her drive. It didn't happen. A resident in the second row stood and said, "You had him arrested." For swimming. Another voice. You told us the lake was community-owned. Another. Where did the Marina money go? Brenda opened her mouth and nothing came out clean. Ryan didn't raise his voice. He simply said, at this point, the Homeowners Association needs to vote on emergency removal and the investigation will proceed. The board called it. Hands went up. Brenda's authority, the thing she'd been swinging like a bat, evaporated in front of everyone. She stepped back from the podium like it burned. The microphone squealed, then went dead. For a second, she just stood there holding her clipboard with both hands like if she squeezed hard enough, reality would obey. I looked at her and said evenly, the lake is mine, and the law isn't something you get to rewrite because you're loud. Brenda didn't storm out. She didn't deliver a final villain line. She just stood there blinking fast while the investigator asked her to come speak privately, and the room watched her walk away without the crown. Lesson learned in a fight with an HOA noise is their weapon paperwork is yours.